Welcome back, everyone. We've had an awesome start to the day and have many more amazing sessions planned ahead. For those of you who have just joined us and could not attend the sessions earlier, the recording of those should be up on the platform very soon. Our third session of the day will discuss the value of tech-based advisory in the eyes of the farmer. The session is being moderated by Mahesh Girdhar, President and CEO of fertilizer business Deepak Fertilizers. The floor is all yours, Mahesh.
Thank you very much. It's an interesting topic, and I'm happy to moderate the session along with my fellow panelists. We have 1 hour. How we plan is that first 45 minutes we will go through discussing this interesting topic with the expert groups, and later on, last 15 minutes we will leave the floor open for audience Q&A. So let me quickly introduce, without losing further time, our key panelists. First, Dr. Praveen Rao. Dr. Rao is Vice Chancellor at Professor Jayashankar Telangana State Agriculture University. Welcome, sir, for the session. We have Mr. Martin Kutter, COO for Plantix. Plantix is a digital advisory service. Their app is quite frequently used by Indian farmers. Welcome, Martin, for the session, and looking forward to your insights. We have Amandeep Panwar, who is CEO for Bharat Rohan Agri-Tech startup, and he has a lot of experience on drone-led advisory, already active in northern part of India. So welcome, Amandeep.
Thank you.
So what I will do is I'll lay down, let's say start of the session. And I come from ag input industry. I have experience in seeds, crop protection, and fertilizer recently. So the topic given is a very interesting topic to us, that value of technology-based advisory in the eyes of the farmer. The way I would like to start the discussion is that, number one, start with, does farmers value advisory itself? So we will lead through 4 key questions. First, setting the scenario, current status in the first 2 questions, and last 2 questions we will take more toward looking forward and also sharing our experiences. Well, I think it is very common understood that farmers need advice. They need crop production advice. They need crop cultivation advice in order to enhance profit by virtue of enhancing productivity, quality, or even better price. Farmer need advice also to reduce their cost through optimizing input, as well as farmer need advice, crop advice, for managing their risk in the field. Which means there is a need for the farmer and there is a gap which can be fulfilled through digital advisory or physical advisory. However, if we see, experience so far tells us that monetizing the tech-based advisory services is difficult. There is a need gap, but it's not easy to monetize that and for the farmer to pay for these services. As my own personal experience into ag input is that last 25 years, we have done various market research. We understood through various insights that advisory is a very much unorganized business. Today, 2/3 of the farmers seek and get their advice either from input supplier or through fellow farmers. It's only 25% which is organized through universities, through academicians, through extension programs, or through company, or sometimes through other medium. But 2/3 of the time, it is either linked to input or it is coming from a fellow farmer. So, in that context, number one, channelizing monetization only physical-based advisory is a difficult topic. How would farmers pay for a digital advisory? That's the question we should dwell around. And the first question I would ask the group to actually analyze and discuss, do farmers really need advice? What is your view? Are these digital tech advisory platforms seen as credible in that context? So let's go through that step one by one, and maybe I'll ask Martin to start with giving us your insights on the first question. Do really farmers need advice? Do they see tech advisory as a credible source?
Good. Thank you, Mahesh. So I think at Plantix, we've naturally centered our entire business around the assumption that there is a strong need for it. So I think if we look at some key statistics, 30% of the crop is lost every year globally due to pests and diseases. That's the first topic that we try to tackle. And then I think Mahesh has already alluded to that a bit. Once the farmer tries to get a product for a certain issue, they often get the wrong product. So I think the Indian government states that every second time they get a wrong product. So there are substantial issues that have not been solved that affect the farmer, that are probably also the biggest single items affecting his profitability and his income. So that's what we've centered our business around. We've basically just built an app that helps the farmer to identify the problem on the spot. So to answer the question, is there a need for it? I think we can simply track our data and our numbers. We see millions of farmers using that service every year. So we've done 10 million analyses last year. And I think the measure of whether they trust and need that is naturally, do they come back? Do they use it a second time, a third time? And I think we have really good data on that. So we see a high proportion of people coming back. I think one of the challenges of tech-based services is naturally user experience. How does it work for the farmer? It's naturally not the person who talks to them, so that the person can always follow up when the farmer has not managed to do something right away. So that is something that tech-based services have to invest a lot in. How do you make the usability of an app good, so that the farmer who maybe has his first smartphone only in life and really gets to know the service and gets to use the service. But I think the data is very clear, and the monetization is naturally the trick that is harder to tackle.
And Martin, what do you think the credibility piece of it? How do you assess that farmer believe this is a credible information coming through the app?
I think like with any advice and whether it's human or machine-based, app-based advice, it's a trust thing. So does the farmer make a good experience the first time, the second time, and then he'll come back a third or a fourth time. So you will try to optimize that. And I think we see in repeat users, so people who come back, and in the comments and the feedback that we get, that a high proportion of farmers are happy. We always get this quote, the most often quote we get from farmers is actually, what we provide is magic to them. They've never had this before. They suddenly have a doctor right next to them when they've never been able to access a plant doctor. So I think the feedback that the technology is magic for them is telling that they trust it.
Mm-hmm. You must be measuring as well the repeat uses and number of time clicks tells you whether engagement is enhancing or. Yeah,
so we do tend to get sort of 60% of users who passed a certain hurdle and got to use the service and know how to use it, and 60% of the people come back year by year.
Interesting. Maybe thank you very much. We'll move forward, and I'll ask now Dr. Rao. As we discussed, you have already initiated a significant project. You're working with about 100 startups. I'm very happy to note that the significant lead taken by the university, by yourself, in assessing ag-tech startups and bringing a business model. So what would be your view, sir, on the same question?
Yeah, with regards to the first question, does farmers really keen on receiving the crop advisory? Yes, certainly. Now, but we have to look at when you go to the ground level, there are in the agri food value chain system, there are different types of advisories which we may have to cater to the needs of the farmer. For instance, we should be focused. For example, we have low yield, low input farming systems, what we call it as rain-fed farming systems. We have intensive, high input irrigated farming systems. Okay, so when we talk of say low input, low yielding rain-fed farming systems, they are mostly interested in to know what type of crop to be sown, when to be sown, how they are what you call contingency crop planning. So these are the issues. So related to the weather, climate change, and so on and so forth. So certainly the risk is high, but because farmer takes a decision, as you were rightly saying, on 3 points. One is risk, another one is production costs, and the third one is with regards to profitability. So the risk is very high in case of rain-fed farming systems. So the farmers need timely advice with regards to when to sow, what to sow, and so on and so forth. Now, when you come to the irrigated conditions, you require, say, what you call maximization of the profits, optimization of the inputs, Okay, so what you call yeah, so what you call harvesting the potential yields. Whereas in rain-fed conditions, you harvest, say what you call, wherein you try to bridge the yield gaps and sustain the yields. So timely advice is very, very important. And in today's ecosystem, when we go to the field level, we see a lot of changes have happened in the last 20-30 years, like soil quality has deteriorated, like water availability is a challenge now, climatic variability is very high. So the traditional mode of advice it doesn't work today. He needs precise advice to manage the crops, to manage the inputs, and also to realize value for the production. Say, for example, when we let us take rice crop. So today the entire harvesting is done through harvesters. So they need to know where the harvesters are available. So similarly, when you are talking of say inputs, they need to know what type. Say, for instance, in our state, over the years, since farmers have used huge amount of DAP, nearly half of the taluks have higher P. So there is no need to apply P there. So timely advice, focused advice according to the say agro ecosystem is the need of the hour today, and that is possible only through these digital applications. So today already university does so what you call through digital mode about 6 lakh plus farmers we provide the advisories to the farmers, and our KVKs are directly involved there. And I think that there is an urge today from the so what you call farmers, and private participation will enhance this situation. And I think certainly there is a need for such platforms.
Thank you. I think what you are saying is time is critical. So
Yes.
speed and skill both are important, and there is a role for tech to play.
Yes.
We will come back to next question to you both again. And maybe Amandeep, how would you put the need gap question into context of what you are doing? The digital sensor technology, you are being very precise on that. So could you please take us through what is your experience in the same field of need gap, and how did you set up the
So
solution?
what we are looking at is, say what we find in the recent past when we analyzed these agri startups and when we interacted with the farmers, there is a low awareness among the farmers. This is one aspect with regards to the products and solutions. There is a low awareness. This is one biggest gap we have seen. And another important thing is that with regards to these startups, the trust factor is very, very important. So what we are trying to do is to address this issue. We have to today build so what called incubation centers at the 2-tier and 3-tier towns. This is one aspect. For say all of them are focused in major cities. Now we have to go to the 2-tier, 3-tier towns is one aspect. Then number two is, since farmers believe in a big way, the universities, there is a need for these agri startups to collaborate with the universities, with the say what you call MSMEs, with the FPOs to build trust and take these technologies to the farmers level for validation. And that is exactly what we are doing is now we are taking these say what you call technologies to the farmers field step through the university window, so that we build that trust among the farmers, and they see for themselves what is happening at the field level, and they will be the problems which they are facing, how they are solved by them. For example, we talk of labor scarcity. So we have introduced robotics at the field level in the farmers field itself. We are talking of drone spraying. So we have taken the say what you call aligned with drone companies, and we have taken the say what you call these drones to the farmers field level, and we are trying to standardize the standard operating protocol. So in addition to this, there are some regulatory issues, say there are some other issues actually which need to be enabling environment has to be created. And the last but not the least is the say most challenging aspect is the data. Data availability is another aspect, so which we have to look at these things. I think trust is the key issue to take them to the farmers.
Right, right. So I think Dr. Rao, you are very well narrating already what should be done in order to build trust. You
Yeah.
know, validation, working with local universities, localizing and showcasing the solutions, building trust. That's an important aspect. So thank you very much. I will come back to you again. Maybe I move to now Amandeep. Amandeep, I raised the question already. So would
Right.
you like to please?
Yes. Yeah. So as put very, very finely by Dr. Rao and Martin. So yes. So there is, first of all, there is a need. So everyone is aware that around 500 crore rupees is lost, among the farmer community in terms of pest attacks and disease outbreaks that they incur, and then again 20 to 30% of their cost of cultivation is in terms of the fertilizers and chemicals, specifically in the regions where crop is irrigated, and which is the high yield and high input regions that we talk about. So, and what we have found out is that when we started Bharat Rohan, the main intent was to provide and fill this gap where farmers have to go towards to some peer farmer groups or maybe to the agri retailers for the advice, and that is a very unorganized way of getting scientific advisory. Um, and again, it is not backed by any kind of data. So we wanted to identify regions which are actually affected by a particular pest, disease, nutrient deficiency, or say water stress, and then suggest farmer accordingly what actions have to be taken on their field. So we do this by monitoring their crop specifically, for each of the farmer who is involved with us. We take out the geo boundaries of all those farmers, enroll those farmers in clusters, and then after 2 to 3 days of the aerial survey, we provide them the advisory and suggest them what actions have to be taken. And we have seen that there has been a increased acceptance after several demonstrations and POCs that we have done with several group of farmers. And to develop the trust, again, just giving out the advisory is not enough. So taking out the feedback, taking getting a clear understanding about what challenges they are facing in implementation of the advisory that we are giving to them, and how they are going to resolve those challenges, supporting them on the ground has also been of utmost importance. So that is where our Kisan Sahyog Kendra across different villages have helped. So for example, in Barabanki district of Uttar Pradesh, we have around 70 Sahyog Kendra, and each Sahyog Kendra has a Kisan Sahyogi that we train as a village level entrepreneur, and we suggest them about how they can coordinate the or get the feedback from the farmers and suggest, and then we have agronomy team who suggests them about the actions to be taken. We also have developed some helplines that farmers can reach out to. We have voice calls and all these other methods that we support, in addition to the drone-based prescription maps that we provide to the farmers, highlighting the zones which require immediate attention and what actions to be taken are suggested through SMS-based and voice calls to the farmers. So yes, and then the kind of acceptance that farmers have is increasing day by day. Then adding some other lines of business also helps in facilitating that and in building trust among the farmers. So yeah.
Okay, so Amandeep, I think what I hear you saying two key points as I see. One is that the scientific advice going through an unorganized way, so there is an opportunity to channelize it, and the way you are channelizing it is through very much site-specific recommendation, right? You go to a particular field, see the field, and you show them this is your field, how look like, and that's what I'm going to do to it. So that enhances credibility in its site specific. It is not coming from app somewhere here and there. So that's good, interesting. I think that leads us to the next question that we are dwelling around. There is a need, there is a gap, and there are certain challenges to establish credibility. And the route to credibility, as I hear, we are saying that create user experience, ensure there is a validation, ensure there is a localization with the universities, and it is site specific, right? So that you become very much specific to a particular farm you are talking to. Let's discuss how you guys see in the startup industry now. How are you seeing the monetization of these services? Current experience is that there is no pay per use. There is a download of app happening, but the monetization of the use, at least what we have seen through tech advisory, is not there, right? And next question we can dwell around is that, is there a real value proposition which should be paid? You know, what is the real value proposition which can be paid? So I go back in my perspective, I would say that, you know, in agri business is a agri finance business, because farmer is in a need of finance to cultivate the crop, and 50% time it's the retail input which actually enables him in the crop production, and then advice is routing through that channel, right? And labor, let's say neighbor farmer, is primarily the concept of seeing is believing, right? And somebody has experienced before me, is an innovator. So I may be second level of, let's say, risk averse farmer, and I'll do next, right? So those are the two key field level observations, right? In that context, how do we create the value? How do we monetize it? So maybe Martin, what's your experience, and how do you see the business model emerging?
So I think what you said is a fact. I think there's very few pay-per-use models in the industry. So I think that this is a hurdle, or I think it's not very specific to agriculture. I think if we look at our own builds, very few of us pay for any type of advice. So we will always save money on advice and will not pay upfront for it. So I think paying for advice is pretty much reserved to big corporates or very affluent people. So if you look at an average farmer, he will not pay for advice, or if so you might have a very tiny fraction of farmers in India who will pay for the advice. So you probably don't address with a pay-per-use model the large majority, so 99% of the farmers. So I think we and most startups have chosen a route to make the service initially for free, and seek an indirect monetization. So there are different routes, I think, which are also typical for a lot of digital models. You offer something for free initially, and then try to see that you understand the user better, that you can access the user on a regular basis, that you have data about it, can improve your services, and then can provide some indirect value or help improve the ecosystem. So to give you one or two examples, I think, for instance, by working so closely with so many farmers across India, so several million farmers every year, you understand the ecosystem better. You understand where pests and diseases pop up. You understand them in a timely manner. You have a real-time system of tracking this. And that is data that can help the entire ecosystem to improve its services. So I think, for instance, when you talk about the supply chain is more or less set up way before the season without knowing what is going to happen in this season. So everyone builds up production, starts to produce inputs for the season, even without knowing how the season will evolve. So I think if you have more and more of a real-time vision and direct connection to the farmers, you can help improve that. And that is the challenge for all of our startups, to see basically that we can make use of these indirect monetization channels that are there. But I would say, I think one of the biggest digital companies on earth is doing advice and monetizing that very heavily. That's Google. I think if you compare the advice we give, companies like Plantex give, we are sort of smaller Googles there. We basically answer you a question for free. But by answering that question, we can monetize if we find the indirect means. And I think you always remember that Google proposition, they don't charge you for anything. Every time you ask them a question, and you would not ask them a lot of questions if they would monetize you at the search field, but they still make a lot of money in the background. So I think that's the challenge we have to crack. We set our eyes on indirect monetization, on making sure that people can learn more about agriculture, and then ultimately also I think a big challenge is how to approach farmers. So I think Dr. Rao has mentioned that already. How do you approach farmers on a regular basis in large numbers is a big challenge to the overall industry. I think marketing to farmers, marketing any service to farmers is still a very ancient regime. there's hardly any digital channels to reach out to farmers. So that's, I think, another big opportunity for startups that manage to get a sufficient scale.
Okay, so I mean, as your experience says that you will be able to monetize through adjacent means, not a direct pay per use. You will need to find an alternate route, and there are examples in the industry. My question is, and I'll now ask the question to Dr. Rao, that what I mean, I know maybe I may be wrong, but there are about 250 startups, egg startups in the country, right? How do you see this business model evolving? What can be done when it comes to developing value proposition in order to sustain? Because if business model sustains, then everybody in the system would gain. Otherwise, it will fail. So you cannot have 250 Googles probably. You might have 2 Google, 3 Googles, but there would be still an effort to create value with further other adjacencies. So, Dr. Rao, what's your experience? What's your view on this?
Yeah, one statistics I to provide. What is as on today, I understand that from my team, there are about 600 post POC agri startups in a post POC stage today. And nearly about 1 billion has been already pumped into this ecosystem. Now, what we look at is when we talk of catering to the masses, because these are smallholders and so on and so forth. So how they can pay and so on and so forth. There are two models which we are looking at is, one is say what you call approaching through FPOs, say what you call NGOs and self-help groups. Okay, so aligning with them, this is one approach which we have to look at. And another one is hubs and spokes model, wherein we have a hub at say what you call in one of the farmers' fields, and we cater to the around needs. So that because technology affordability is a most important thing, and value proposition to our technology is another. So what you call the small farmers have to, because as we see, the earnings of the small farmers are approximately around 1 lakh rupees per hectare. So now in the morning itself, we were discussing with our startups. So they say that through those earnings only has to invest in this. And earlier, if you remember that earlier in and around Hyderabad, we used to have grape farms where farmers used to pay to the consultants for their advice. So the model is there actually. So, but now due to the what you call small farmers, so that is one. So that means products and solutions should be taken through the self-help groups, NGOs, and as well as the aggregation and all that. This is one aspect. And another thing is the most important aspect is if you want to take it to a larger, say what you call number of farmers, we realize there are certain barriers which we notice. One is how farmers still do not know how these innovations are impacting their income. This is another aspect. So I think there is a need for, say what you call in-depth research on this, how innovations are impacting the farmer's income. And what are the challenges in farmer adoption of these new age technologies. So unless we define these things, what exactly? So whenever we talk to the farmers, if the technology is a problem-solving technology, he immediately adopts it. So it should be a problem-solving technology. As far as the affordability is concerned, so we were asking our IT department, that means how state governments can play important role through research centers and agri universities to support these startups for pilots and validation of the technology. So that can we take up pilots at the say farmers level. This is another approach to go to a larger mass. FPOs, MSMEs, say what you call aggregator groups, say what we call through this. Then another one, what we are looking at is village level entrepreneurs. Training and capacity building of village level entrepreneurs will also take us to the large masses. So that ecosystem will build up. So if we are talking of say other routes, I think the gestation period will be too long. I think we have to go straight to the farmers, say what you call, and show them in the farmers' fields and tying up with this. And this is where, say, since NABARD is pushing in a big way, and say what you call, and SFAC also, lead institutions like these are coordinating coordinating with FPOs. So if NABARD, SFAC, universities, and so what you call agri startups come together, I think we can go to large masses, and it would be possible to build that say what you call channel and take these technologies to the larger masses. That is what I believe.
So basically, Dr. Rao, bringing economies of scale is going
Yeah.
to be an important aspect, and you have mentioned various routes of bringing economy of scale. Interesting. Uh, yeah, so we move to Amandeep, and in your experience, uh, and you have created certain value proposition in your business model. Uh, can you share that? How do you see monetization of the value proposition?
Yes, Mahesh. We have observed this. Like we started out giving the advisory, and we have been charging farmers on per acre per crop season basis. And but to achieve scale, we recognize that although farmers saw a clear value proposition that they are, saving their crop loss. To give you an example, for crops like Japanese mint, farmers have saved around 3,600 rupees per acre while working with Bharat Rohan in terms of the agriculture inputs. And in by saving their crop losses, their yield was increased from 50 kg per acre of Japanese mint oil to 70 kg per acre of Japanese mint oil. So overall, there was a clear value proposition of around 23,000 rupees that a farmer was able to get while working with Bharat Rohan. But again, at scale, when they are, when we are charging them, certain several thousand rupees for an entire crop season, it became difficult for us to scale, because for a value that they are going to get after the harvest, they'll be able to realize that what is the benefit that they're getting only when the crop is getting harvested. That kind of value proposition to be shown on the ground at scale was difficult. So that is where we revised our business model, and we had to not just stay dependent on the advisory based subscription. We had become accustomed to that we'll be providing the advisory for free, which would act as an anchor. Technology would act as an anchor for us to build trust with the farmers. And then we entered into the supply chain, where we started working with farmers in procurement of their agri produce at the time of harvest. So then they started to realize this, that if we are giving the advisory throughout the crop season, and then at the time of harvest we are also purchasing their commodity, and they see that their yield has gone up, and while working with us their agri inputs have been saved. So they started to realize that, okay, this is clearly showing a value to us, staying engaged with Bharat Rohan. So in that manner, they do not consider selling their crop to anyone else, if they are enrolled with Bharat Rohan. So they want to sell to Bharat Rohan so that they can keep on working with us in the subsequent crop seasons as well. So that is how we revised our business model, and I have been working in Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh primarily on the similar kind of model. And then another monetization strategy that we had adopted is work with agri input companies to suggest the say fertilizers, chemicals to the farmers on the basis of the advisory that we are creating, and then making commissions on the sale of agri input, or suggesting agri input companies that these are the locations where for example we work with a agri input company where they manufacture humic acid. So we identified through drone based imaging what are the alkaline soils, soil that farmers are having in a particular region, so that they can go and sell their humic acid to that particular location. So that those kind of interventions are what we did, which is basically ancillary monetization strategy that we had to develop, because charging farmers directly on in upfront basis becomes difficult, and makes it very difficult for us to scale in the longer run. So yeah, that's what our experience has been.
So I'll share one experience we have in the input side and link to that on the services. Since we are into a crop nutrition business, one of the key requirement to provide a solution, whether it is a portfolio solution or it is an advice solution, is analytics. You need to know what the crop needs and you need to know what is in the soil, right? And then you can provide crop nutrition solution. So we have a government accredited laboratory where we are in a position to test about 30,000 samples every year. Now, there are tons of, let's say, services available to test the soil samples free. In our experience, we are able to monetize the soil testing as a service to about one third of our, let's say, testing. But those are the farmers who are seeing significant value proposition linked to imbalanced use of nutrition and high value crops like grapes, like pomegranate, some vegetables or flowers, whereby the value accredited is quite high. So there is significant value proposition. Then you are actually going to pay for that. But apart from that, if you look into overall perspective, there are multiple other barriers, and we should discuss now what are the triggers and barriers in actually monetizing it. So one of the barrier we understood is a psychological barrier. Even human beings don't go for medical test every year. Forget about soil. It's a psychological issue. Second is awareness issue. What do I do with that? Yeah. So wherever we are able to reach out and train, educate farmer that analytics is important to provide a precise nutrition solution, you are there. But otherwise you are not there. Third is access. Whether availability is there to do the testing. Are there labs around? I mean, like you have human testing labs. They're not labs around like that. You have to carry the sample to far distances. And the fourth is key question of value proposition. You know, where if I'm able to relate analytics to its use and create enhance income, reduce input, then I create value proposition and then there is a pay is coming, and that's where our experience in high value crops, but in low value crops still not. So what from your perspective, Martin, you see key triggers and barriers, one or two, and let's look into time. We are about 5-7 minutes from our discussion, and then we leave the floor open for the questions. So maybe 2 minutes each. Triggers and barrier, and maybe one example if you have successful example of monetizing the service.
Yeah. So I'll do it short. I think that there's basically, I think, always two things that get mixed up. One is sort of the cost side of providing services, and the other one is the monetization side of services. So I think we at Plantex try to really be as digital as possible. So just a pure digital play. And that's why we try to work out a system which doesn't involve feet on the ground, doesn't involve a local entrepreneur, since all of these things will add a strong additional cost to acquisition, to recurring costs, etc., etc. So if you do a pure digital play, you can probably minimize the cost of providing the services, and that is key, since farmers are not able to pay a lot, whether directly or indirectly. And then find the route, and I think all of us have hypotheses. No one has proven it yet. So we base it on indirect monetization, where we basically also have to get the industry used to new means being available. So I think when we have data, it is a route to convince industry players and to get industry players to really make use of the data. So it's a lot of new stuff arising, and I think also for medium-sized, larger corporations, a lot of this is new, and they first have to get these things into their processes and find ways of making use to it. So I think ultimately, I think we're based on two big principles. If it's not pure digital play, it's going to be difficult since the cost is too high. The second one is gain access to the ecosystem at the bottom level, at the village level, so that you can really connect people digitally to it, learn with the data from it, and then see that you can optimize services that are supposed to reach the farmer by data, by digital distribution, digital marketing.
Is there, Martin, any successful example outside maybe any other country where you are seeing that the pure digital play is monetized to a scale?
No, I think we are very early in agriculture. Is one of the last segments across the industries to become digital. So I think we are really innovators. We have to innovate, and we have to find or adopt maybe models that have been successful in other industries. I think the specific challenge is naturally that agriculture doesn't happen in the cities. That makes it easier in a lot of industries, since you can aggregate much easier when you're in a city. So we go to the rural countrysides, all of us. So we have more of an aggregations challenge, but I think as far as I'm aware, we cannot compare what we talk here about to any American players or something. Agriculture looks so different in European or American countries where you have large scale farms. So we really, when we talk about small scale farmers, that's a new challenge and not a tackled challenge yet, and that's what we set out to do, to tackle that.
Okay, so basically aggregation of smallholders data linking to industry. You don't want to create kiosk because that's a high cost model. Google doesn't have kiosk. So
no, I think what we do work with, and we have now, actually this month we have passed the threshold of now working with 10% of our retailers in India. So we do not put a new person into the business, make competition, add to the ecosystem in terms of another player, but we've basically we're working with about 30,000 retailers in India to help them and provide services, but it doesn't add a cost. It helps them to become more efficient. So they are probably the first benefiters, that they can improve their services, get more certainty on what they should sell to a farmer, provide to a farmer when he has an issue.
understood. Thank you very much, Martin. We'll move forward looking into time. Dr. Rao, in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, what's your view?
2 or 3 issues. One is, in my opinion, to these barriers, to overcome these barriers and take it to the masses. One is piloting agri stacks is one issue. That needs to be done in a big way. That is one. Then number 2 is building incubation support in rural India is another aspect. Then so what you call another aspect is dedicated cells for agri-tech startups at the state level, so that they can be identified and taken to the masses by the, say, what you call, because many a times we see that these agri-tech startups are not able to reach the policymakers or the bureaucracy. This is so data, incubation centers, say what you call agri stacks, and as well as say what you call collaborations. This is, so we understood that in the agri value chain, no single say what you call vendor or agri startup will be able to solve all the problems. So there is a need for a platform approach, wherein say what you call these vendors and the service providers can come and take the solutions to the farmer. So that is where, so this platform approach, building incubation, say what you call ecosystem at the rural level, say dedicated cells at the state level, and say what you call demystifying this say entire thing at the youth level. I think this ecosystem has to be built up in the universities and governments, unless that is done. And to do that, first thing is agri stacks, data, say policy at the state level is a must. Without data, we cannot move forward on the issue. This is in say what called simple mantra.
Right. Thank you. I think it's clear that nobody can act alone. You need to have a platform approach, aggregation approach. You need to adopt the policy, and data is in the center. We move to Amandeep. Last 2 minutes for you, and then we will leave the floor open for Q&A.
Okay. So the way we approach it is like this. Like when we suggest an advisory to a farmer, when we suggest some recommendation, make a recommendation to a farmer, what is the incentive that farmer would get? So one is that yes, they see a problem, like there is a pest attack, disease, or whatever the crop issue that they might be facing. Now to act on the advisory, what is the incentive? For them, they can save that amount of those doses, they can reduce the agri inputs. But again, in the eyes of farmer, the only incentive that they get is when they are able to sell their produce, and that is when they see the real value. That when they are, suppose we tell them that you do not use this weedicide, use hand weeding. But the benefits of not using a herbicide, particularly, if he's cultivating crops like say cumin, would be that there would be less amount of pesticide residues that would come in, which would fetch him a better price. So the kind of advisory that we are making has to be linked with some kind of incentive, and those incentives should also be there into the entire agri system. So what we are trying to do, how we approach it is that although we provide advisory, we also try to link that with the incentive, so that farmer realizes the value in the complete value chain, not just that we give out the advisory and ask them that this is what you are required to do. That's not how farmers see it, and that's not how they actually implement an advisory which is given to them. So this is what our 5 years of experience has been in working with farmers, or particularly in terms of the tech-based advisory. That linking incentives along with the advisory is what has proven to be beneficial for the entire agriculture system as well as for the farmers. Yeah.
So, Amandeep, I think we go to questions. I can see in the chat box there are some questions, and I can read and we see if we have already answered that or it's a new question. The first question I can see here is it possible for an agri startup to monetize digital tech advisory on a large scale and to do so profitably? I think that's what we have been dwelling around in the whole topic in the last 40 minutes.
Okay.
If you're okay, I'll move forward. Or if in any one word, I'll move to next question and see there is specific question we can tackle, because how can you make sure the tech advisory is adopted by smallholders and marginal farmers? So we touched that two approaches. One is a purely digital approach, which Martin explained, going directly to the users and finding different routes to reach to them, retailers, industry, and creating value proposition through a data and monetizing it. But farmer benefit going through direct digital approach.
Mahesh, I would add this is where the small and marginal farmers, when you want to go them, you don't have any other option except for hubs and spokes model. You have a hub for few thousands of farmers from where you provide all that, because you have to take this to the field level, wherein farmers have to see for themselves. So this, if many, because for example, you are talking of irrigation scheduling, when to apply, how much to apply, how best to apply. So now when you want to solve this problem, you cannot put sensors in all the farmers' fields. You cannot monitor through drones all the farmers' fields. Okay, today satellite data is relatively say what you call what I call not to the level of preciseness what we need. So unless you take this to the farmers field level in a hubs and spokes model and do the piloting, then the farmers themselves can see that, and then it can lead to the monetization as well, and farmers can adopt it. This is what we feel that the feedback what we have from the farmers. Of course, all other things what we said, data and all that will have to be in place.
Right. So I think it's fundamental belief that we definitely need economies of scale, and then adoption could take place, and each part of that economy will get benefit, which is smallholders. Rightly so, we have a significant momentum going on the FPOs, and we also have our own experience working with FPOs, where we can bring our portfolio solution along with the advice together. We are seeing good traction in terms of benefit of the smallholder farmers. So I'll move to next question. If there is no willingness to pay for standalone advisory, they are either bundled with other services or data is monetized. How do we ensure farmers' well-being at the end of the day, particularly avoiding product bias in advisory and in commission-based model, be ethical issues of the data? So this is a different question. I think there is a linkage of input to advice, and there is a bias to sell the input, and hence advice can be tweaked. And second is how would we use the data? So I go to first question to Martin, because your app throws certain, you take a click and you get a recommendation, right? So how do you handle that bias there?
I think we have to be very transparent and earn the trust day by day that we are just a doctor that is not paid for by anyone. So I think on that side, we have to be very transparent. When do we earn money, in which way, and communicate that to the farmer, and also be very transparent on data we collect and what happens with any data. So I think that is a typical challenge when you provide a digital service. So I think we strongly believe in being an independent advisor. I think you're always a good doctor if you don't are not too closely tied up with someone who then sells the product. So I think we always offer alternatives. We show alternatives. We make clear if we get a monetary incentives, and at the end where these monetary incentives are. I think that is what we basically have to crack over time. But I just want also to pick up one more item from the previous question. I think the hub and spoke model is pretty much the traditional model. So I think my personal concern would always be that it adds a significant cost to the equation, since someone needs to pay for the hub. And our experience is that it will add a significant cost to the overall operating cost, the acquisition cost of the system. So I think we sometimes also tend to underestimate farmers in terms of their ability to adopt services, their ability to use services. So I think from our playbook, we have acquired every single farmer via Facebook. So we've not relied on people on the ground, and we have millions of farmers using it. So again, I think we try to really look at other industries, what has been successful in other industries, how do digital models evolve, and how can you make the best use really of a pure digital play. So in terms of acquisition costs, in terms of ongoing operating costs, and then learning from all these monetization models that are out there, which have just not been applied to agriculture yet.
Yeah, Martin, you may be right in certain with regards to diagnostic services or with regards to pest and disease, but not the entire agri value chain. Agri value chain requires this model. Okay, so one or two services can be in that manner, but the entire value chain, I think the ecosystem is not ripe yet today to push that say level of this one. So so you have to build the trust. To build the trust, because Plantix came to us 7 years back, I think 4 or 6, 7 years back. So, and say what you call, we have put you across the KVKs. You have gone to the field, you have discussed. So there is no shortcut for that. So until the ecosystem builds to that level, so data, say what you call, combining with aggregators, say FPOs, say what you call these models, ultimately you have to show the results. So results without reliable data will make a say what you call this ecosystem lose its say what you call reliability. That is my viewpoint.
No, not Dr. Rao, and exactly. I think you're absolutely right. I think maybe the distinction is sort of you have an incubation phase where you do your first steps, but when you want to then later on become large scale, you need to find a model that is really cost efficient, and that's when you sort of have to optimize the cost. And I think the every item you add basically adds to the overall cost of the service and makes it even more difficult to monetize it. So I think that is our learning, that we try to make it as digital as possible if we want to be large scale.
We'll take one more question. Thank you very much. I think I'll just reflect on this question of input along with advisory. So my thought would be, why are we worried about that? There is a value proposition farmer is looking at. If your value proposition is stronger enough, which combines an input recommendation along with an advice how to use it, when to use it, how much to use it. So the value proposition becomes stronger for both, for input as well as for the advice. So why should we really segregate that? We cannot just say advice on one side as a knowledge and use on the other side as a use. I mean, you are influencing use by knowledge. So if it is linked somewhere, and if there is a value proposition, why not? Otherwise, how the business model will fly? I mean, we can't create all Googles. You have to be practical and see where is the value proposition. Value proposition would be combined and result. Yeah, Amandeep, you want to say something?
Yes, adding to what you have said, Mahesh, we have seen this on the ground that if we are suggesting a chemical formula to a farmer that you have to spray flubandiamide, in 50 ml per acre, this is the proportion, this is the chemical that you have to use. Farmer is not going to remember this, and what they recognize this, is a particular product that is available in the market of certain company. So they can just go, if we suggest them that you have to say, to just give you an example, PI Industries Fluton, you can just go and purchase that from a local retailer. So if we suggest that you purchase a Fluton and you spray in this particular quantity, that's how they are able to implement the advisory in much more efficient way, and that is how we will ensure that they are using that product on the ground, which is actually required. It's not about the product bias. We do not get anything out of if we push a particular product. One is that if we push a particular product, like there would be pesticide residue, and if it is harmful for the entire system, or if there is nothing that the agriculture system is going to gain out of if we are going with a product bias. Products exist for the benefit of the farmer, and if we are suggesting a particular product to the farmer, it is going to benefit the farmer in the longer run. So that's how we should look at. And it is also promoting the implementation of the advisory in much more efficient way,
Right.
implementation of technology in much more efficient way. So that is how it should be seen like.
So I think worry about the value proposition for the consumer and let farmer decide. It makes sense. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, that's the best way. Maybe I take just 1 minute left. The question on ethical use of data. Dr. Rao, what are your thoughts? You are working on that. Some thought process.
The thing is now the data availability is in isolation. So we are working on several, say what you call, building up this platform. We have challenges with regards to interoperability. We have the challenges with regards to capturing the data storage, then processing it. So there are issues. So we say what you call, now every state has to come up with a data platform and a policy. What data is an open data? What data is an paid data? Say how this data, and today we hear from the farmers that the data collected by the agri startups from them. So they are worried that how this data is used and how say what you call it will be useful for them. So there are several issues which we are still struggling to say what you call standardize and develop so what you call standard operating protocols for that exactly. So we are working with the Department of IT, we are working with the World Economic Forum in that, and we are trying to build this, and we are also working with some of the, say what you call, agri startups to actually standardize. So for that, what we are doing is we have identified some use cases. It is not possible overnight to build this one. So we are trying to identify the use cases and its associated data, and a policy is being on the anvil. Probably in a short time we'll come up with some model which will be useful for the farmers, which will be useful for the vendors, which will be useful for the service providers, all of them. So it is still not clear. That's what.
Okay, thank you very much. I think this would be very, very helpful, this policy on how data would be managed, because this can help on one side security on the data, on the other side access to various startups can help them to come up with their own products. And if the products is a value proposition, you have an open playing ground, right? Yeah. Okay, so I think we can't take any more question now. Thank you very much. It was 1 hour short time, looks like. I think interesting topic, evolving topic. And thank you very much to all of you sharing your experience, sharing your thoughts. I think we have a diverse diverse field view coming here. Somebody who is hands-on startup, somebody who is global digital, somebody who is working on policy framework, as well as looking from a broader perspective, and I'm seeing from input perspective. So hopefully we have been able to justify and create, at least provide our thought process to the various budding startups, and good luck to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahesh.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Praveen, Amandeep,
Thank you,
Martin,
Mahesh.
and Mahesh, for sharing your thoughts and experiences with us on this topic. I'm sure the entrepreneurs got a better understanding of what innovations can attract farmers to try new tech, and of course, starting with building trust with them. Up next is the session on building a strong ecosystem for the productive use of renewable energy and a masterclass on seeking capital for your enterprise, how to be investment ready. You can also head over to Networking Lounge to meet Geet and Abhilash from Unis Social Business and Alice from Innovate UK. So see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Mahesh. Thank you, Martin. Nice
Thank
meeting
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rao. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Amardeep. I think it was good, diverse discussions we had, different thoughts. We have different experiences, but it's a very interesting field.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have some are starting and some are in the middle, and